TG, welcome to part 3, the myths of MM2H, if you like. I remember reading an article you wrote a while back on the myths of MM2H, and it was really engaging. Can you give us a bit of background and some insight into that?
Absolutely, Keith. What sparked that article was something I noticed from the very beginning of our business. Misinformation, and it actually got worse over time. Okay. Even in the early days, certain myth and half-truth about MM2H kept circulating online on the internet. Without internet, all this wouldn't have happened. Okay. Persistent myth and persistent misinformation.
Yeah.
Back then, they spread mainly through internet forums, which had a limited reach, which was good, but it still persisted. But over time, it got worse, much worse, when Facebook and social media became the norm. Let me just pause and let me just say something very different. Just the very fact that WhatsApp came into the picture after 2019 changed everything. With email, you can actually do things. You can do it the following day. You know, when WhatsApp comes in, if you don't reply everything within 2 hours, the next message comes in. Did you get my message? I was like, everybody is so stressed up. But when you click and forward it out via WhatsApp to anybody, that information, be it real, truth, or a myth, gets spread so fast. You know? And with that, people just forwarded. Previously, you know what they do? They just copy and paste. You know, they still have some work to do. Copy and paste whatever they read without checking the facts, without context, or without any real understanding of how the program actually works. They copy, paste it, and send to everybody. So unfortunately, this myth takes on a life on their own. So even today, we still get clients asking about the things that were never true to begin with, simply because they read it somewhere online. You know, they never checked the date was 2010, you know, those dates. So it's a case of read it once, repeat it forever. That is why I wrote that article, to set the record straight, to debunk common misconception, and to give people accurate first-hand knowledge based on real experience, our 20-year experience, and not hearsay.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Social media has a way of amplifying, absolutely everything. Can you walk us through some of the more common myths about MM2H?
One of the biggest and most persistent myths is that MM2H isn't a good visa, because it's not a resident visa. It's just a long-term tourist visa. And yes, technically that is true. It's a long-term social visit pass, also known as tourist visa. But here's what people don't understand. There's actually a benefit. If you're on a resident visa, you're expected to pay taxes in Malaysia. But under MM2H, you are not issued a Malaysian tax number, so you cannot file a Malaysian tax return. That has been the case since 2002. Now compare that with something like Malaysia just had, the digital nomad visa di rantau. If you are very familiar with the visa, you are required to get a Malaysian tax ID before you get the di rantau visa stamped on your new passport. It's one of the checklist documents that you need to have. That means that you have to file taxes every year in Malaysia and pay taxes every year in Malaysia. So while people complain that MM2H is just a tourist visa, they miss the bigger picture. It's flexible, tax-free, stress-free. And that's exactly what it appeals to retirees and long-term visa. Unfortunately, Keith, social media is rather cruel. It doesn't explain nuances. It doesn't tell you the context of everything.
True.
People just take it as it is. You see a picture and say, oh, that's it, you know. People read one line, repeat it endlessly, and it misleads others. That's the danger of unchecked information. The second persistent myth, and a big myth that gained traction during COVID, was Malaysia treated MM2H holders terribly, that they didn't let them back into the country. Now, this myth actually disappointed me. You know, it disappoints me a lot, even right up to today. I'm a little bit sad on this. I will always go into a correction mode every time I hear it. And when I hear it, it's always people say, oh, I just heard it from the internet. It was actually not them who got hit. In fact, I even wrote an article about it and shared it on Facebook. It's still on my website, alterdomus.com.ny. Now, here's what really happened. Malaysia went into lockdown on March 18, 2020. But by early May, I have already began helping MM2H holders re-enter the country. And I can remember clearly my first case was May the 1st. And it was supposedly a public holiday at Bogor. But during that time, everybody was on holiday. Okay, it was in lockdown mode. That was my first case. And I continue to do so throughout the pandemic. Yes, the system was not perfect. There is never a perfect system in the world. It has a lot of issues, but it was there to help people to get in. Well, if you look at it on the other side, people like to compare with other countries, correct? Now, in contrast, look at Thailand. Their one-year retirement visa is very restrictive. You have to stay in Thailand. You have to check in with immigration every 3 months, although some people say there are ways about it. And if you leave the country without special approval, your visa can be terminated. That's what I was told. Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. I'm not on that visa. So when COVID hit, many couldn't return. And they didn't complain because they knew about the rules. With Malaysia, it was different. MM2H holders were used to freely entering and exit the country, Keith. So when the borders closed, many were frustrated. But what people don't realize was many of them were rejected when it comes to entering the country because their application wasn't done properly. Meanwhile, at that time, I was bringing in people. I think probably at the end of the COVID, I probably bring in hundreds. I did not count. I even arranged a special case, which that person was so grateful, where a US citizen needed surgery and was granted re-entry with a Malaysian caregiver tagging along. It was actually unheard of. People cannot leave this country, people cannot come in as quoted. But I managed to get somebody with a local caregiver going to US, get the surgery done, and come back in Malaysia without any issues.
Wow, amazing.
It's all about how you present the case.
Sure.
With the right evidence and justification, you can get it done. Not just blabber it on somewhere and say no. I give an example. One of those years, those weird years of COVID, the system that you have is you need to apply online and have a PDF that you need to upload, and it has to be, I think, under 250 kilobytes. I will submit the PDF file with just 1 or 2 key points to tell the person why that person needs to enter Malaysia. And you know what? It worked like a charm. My approval rate was like 90%. The other 10% is probably my reason wasn't good or he couldn't understand my English.
Right.
After that, I changed it to simple, short sentences. One day, my client told me that she has been rejected, 5 or 10 times, I'm not sure. I asked her for the files. They were all crammed with tiny fonts, 20 bullet points, fuzzy, compressed PDF will be very fuzzy.
Yeah.
Too much information. No wonder it got rejected. The approving officer just couldn't read and understand.
Yeah.
And as a natural human being, you know what they did? If you were you, click reject because you don't understand what it is.
Sure.
So you can be rejected 20 times if you use the same file. So yes, it took real work, not just the paperwork. Okay, it is also very important when I brought people in, not only the paperwork, I have to arrange for the logistics as well. That was part of our service that we gave. It was actually a hidden service that only a fraction of our clients know, because many of them are already staying in Malaysia. I have to arrange for transport from KLIA to Penang, making sure that the guy is there, communicating with the authorities. But it could be done, and we have done it again and again and again over the years during COVID. That's why when I see sweeping criticisms online, I always pause, because the system wasn't broken. It just requires somebody to know how to navigate it.
I absolutely concur with that. And I can actually personally vouch for your magic, because I remember being out of the country, being stuck out of the country, and calling you saying, get me back in. And I just thought it was an impossibility. It was almost like, with the documentation that you needed, it was like getting the stars to align. And I remember very, very clearly you saying, it's not going to be an issue. And you actually did. You pulled it off almost effortlessly, I have to say. So thank you for that. That made such a difference. They were such crazy times.
Well, glad to help you, Keith. Actually, it was not magic. It was actually a lot of grit and determination and just trying to calm you that everything is fine. But I was actually doing a lot at the back. Okay, that's the reason why I say that my clients won't know anything about it that is behind the scenes.
I'd say it felt like magic to me. So, with my own personal story in mind, what other stories, what other myths stand out to you?
The third myth, I hear all the time is that Malaysia has stiff competitions from places like Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Okay, let me just put it in a very blunt ways. They are not our competitors, those countries. They attract a different demographic, different personalities, and they have different expectations. In our 20 years of experience, we have seen the pattern. People don't usually sit down and go, should I retire in Malaysia or Thailand or the Philippines? No, it actually doesn't work that way. Most people already gravitate to one country based on lifestyle, culture, language, infrastructure.
It's a very polite way to say it, TG.
Yeah, and also whether how welcome they felt. From what my experience is, only a tiny fraction of people genuinely like 2 or 3 countries. They are okay with A and B, but they are all statistically insignificant number. They've already made up their mind. Now, bear in mind that staying in a country as a tourist is completely different than staying in a country permanently. You can say that, I like to go to, I like to go and see Eiffel Tower. Yeah, it's a great place. But once you start to stay there, you may say, oh, okay, I have to pay taxes. I have to pay extremely high energy bills. The food is always probably, yes, nice on the first one, but after the 100th time, probably you might want to say that I want to take back my old food in my old country. So it's again all these things. So when people do choose Thailand or the Philippines over Malaysia, it's often for one reason, the cost of entry.
Of course.
Malaysia's financial requirements are higher than the previous one. But to be very honest, when you factor in inflation since 2006, yes, it's still higher, but a pound of bacon has probably risen quite a lot since 2006 compared to now. Malaysia's financial requirements are not only higher, they are also a little bit stricter in terms of documentation. So those who are price sensitive may settle for other options. There are always trade-off. It's always this or that. The Malaysian government, for its part, has made its stance very clear. We have attended many sessions with the Ministry of Tourism. Yes, there are some relaxations going on here and there, but the core criteria, they are sticking with the current financial framework. They are not giving any indication they are going to change this. This is not a race to the bottom here. I think the government knows about this. Malaysia is not trying to compete on low cost. I think they're focusing on stability, structure, and the most important of all, quality of life. Be it financial, social, security, and everything. And as for places like Malta, Portugal, Spain, Turkey, wherever it is, even South America, Malaysia doesn't compete with them either. Totally different vibes, different visa structures, tax laws, healthcare systems, lifestyle goals, and the most important, for some countries, language. Do you want to learn a new language at the age of 65? Or you would rather go to somewhere where English is already spoken by a lot of people, understood, and the contracts are in English? So when I see online comments comparing Malaysia's to visas in Southern Europe, Latin America, and other countries, I usually tell people, it's like comparing durian to paella. They're just completely different.
It's true. It's very true. And I don't I don't think Malaysia is really competing with any of those other countries either. It's completely different.
That is far beyond superficial. It's called the quality of life, as I said earlier.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm talking about language, healthcare, legal system, property rights, taxation, safety, and the entire living experience, living as a long-term resident. People often make decisions based on what a place looks like as a tourist, you know? But living somewhere is completely different, and it is one of the most underestimated challenges. One of the most underestimated, as what I said earlier,
Yep.
language.
Yeah, true.
A lot of applicants are not in their 20s anymore, you know. Some of them are very successful people who are, you know, based in Asia. A majority of them are semi-retired or, you know, took an early retirement. Learning a new language at that stage can be very difficult. Not only challenging, it can cause fraud to happen because it is in that language that you're not familiar with. Imagine if all your legal documents, property papers, contracts are in a language that you don't understand. You are in a serious risk of being ripped off.
Yep.
If you hire a translator, but who can say that the translator is not in cahoots with the other party? You don't even know, especially if the translator is recommended by the other party as well.
Sure.
Oh, you can use this translator. It could be a rip-off completely and you could lose a whole life savings on that. So that's why many people choose to Malaysia, you know, but they still enjoy traveling as tourists to other countries. They enjoy traveling to Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, or whatever it is. You don't have to live there to enjoy what they offer.
This
correct?
is true. So during COVID, TG, what did you advise your clients to do who were locked out?
During that time, there were a lot of applications that were stuck, and there were also people who are coming to Malaysia. So when Malaysia was shut down, I actually advised some of our clients to go to Thailand first. Their retirement visa, 1-year visa, after some time, probably about half a year, 1 year, they actually open up. You apply for that. Malaysia wasn't open yet. So there are some who need to leave their home country. We just tell them we go to Thailand first. And we actually have a few people who actually went to Thailand. And when Malaysia opened up, they switch over here. Because Thailand was just like a temporary stop
Sure.
for them.
Staging point.
Yeah. But since the early days of 2006 when we started up, you know, the list of positives for Malaysia as compared to other countries, whether it is locked down or not, whether so-called it was fair, unfair, or whatever it is that you want to stay, I'll just go through this list with you. I know you have heard it many times, you know. Great quality of life, solid infrastructure, very affordable healthcare, all documents are in English, a population that speaks English. You have great property laws, cost of living is very affordable, and most importantly, safety and stability. Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, Cambodia, Ecuador, Malta, Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, whatever it is, they all attract different crowds. They don't compete, they serve different needs. And in my opinion, among all which I've done all my research, Malaysia is still the sanest and safest place to call home.
I like that it's the sanest.
Sanest, yes.
You know, I still find it fascinating that, you know, during the MM2H suspension, particularly, you know, you're actually advising your clients to stay in Thailand as a temporary base. And I find that so forward thinking in so many ways. It's real long-term thinking, which is what you're aiming for, I guess. But I want to circle back to one myth that I've talked about before, that you've talked about before, something that I know you feel very strongly about, the idea that MM2H keeps changing, continuously changing. What's the real story there? Is it?
Okay, Keith, a very interesting thing and something that I'm very passionate with is called misunderstanding. It's called blind transmission of misinformation. That myth that just wouldn't die.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you kill it. Let me set the record straight. MM2H doesn't keep changing. The core requirements never change. Here's the actual timeline. Okay. The program started in 2002. It was upgraded and changed in 2006. where the fixed deposit requirements were raised. From 2006 until 2020, the core financial requirements remain unchanged. Then COVID came, and with it, the government shut it down, introduced MM2H a year later, which I call was a disastrous version of the program.
Yeah.
That raised the deposit from 300K to 1 million ringgit and require proof of 40,000 monthly income. Even then, many of us in the industry knew that, even all these things happening, many of us felt that this is not going to last. Yes, there are some who say, yeah, this is going to be the future. Well, there's always two sides to a coin.
Sure.
People like this, people like that. Well, sure enough, once a democratically elected Malaysian government came to office, the new MM2H was at the front and center again. But they have a lot of fires to put out, and it was 1 year later, in December, that they have come out with a new one, the new MM2H. The requirements return to where they have always been. It was just upgraded by a factor of 3 again, in line with previous change.
So it's not constant change, it's more a logical kind of evolution, if you like.
You are absolutely right. See, when you talk to people, I find it very interesting that everything can go up in price because of inflation, except for MM2H requirements. Okay, I was like, okay, kind of like selective data presentation.
Yeah.
So yes, there were documentation tweaks, new forms, new certification requirements, verification letters. That's not the same as changing the core requirements of the MM2H program. So I tell people, you need to make sure that it's clear. The only major shift that I can point out, aside from the COVID disruption, was in 2010 when the pension-based entry, the way that you show the income and you get the visa, without the fixed deposit was removed, 2010. During that time, if you have a strong government pension, you can get away without a fixed deposit. Now, everybody can claim that they can get a government pension. That's where it got abused. Many of the people use that method, oh, I have a government pension, whether it's real or not. Now, let's assume that they are real. Because there is no financial commitment to stay in Malaysia, they actually never stayed in Malaysia.
Right.
It was just a backup plan for them. Some of them never even entered the country, and when the visa expired, they couldn't even bother cancelling it. Then in 2017, Malaysia removed the tax-free car benefit, which some of them had used to game the system. We actually knew people who actually tried to sell the benefit out to somebody else. Yet, with all this, the core requirements of the fixed deposit amount, 150,000 and 300,000, remain the same for 14 years. That's actually stability by any standard.
Absolutely.
Here's what frustrates me. People love to talk about the negative changes on forum and social media. What no one ever talks about are the positive updates, like how existing MM2H participants were grandfathered in, how they all benefit from the new rules without being affected by the new requirements, there were new benefits and everything. Selective storytelling creates a false picture. It's not fair, but what people say?
Yeah, it's life. It's life, isn't it, really? I mean, people repeat, they tend to repeat what they hear, whether it's true or not. And bad stories always flow faster than good stories. So
I agree. They never talk about the good things. They always talk about the bad things. Exactly what I'm looking at. Whenever I meet prospective clients who say that they are hesitant about MM2H because it keeps on changing, I'll just tell them, can you give me an example of the change? I'll tell you probably 100% of the time, they cannot. I'll just ask. So why can't you just give me one? Where do you get all this information from that it keeps on changing? Well, I read it online. So my question is, how can you be so sure that online is correct? The reality is, from 2006 and 2020, the core requirements never change.
yeah,
Bear in mind that when people say changes, it's not about the benefits. I don't see that as a change. I see that as an evolution because people abuse it. Documentation changes happens all the time. But the core requirements never change.
Mm-hmm.
Documentations were tweaked, new forms, verification. It happens in every immigration system worldwide. But the most important, financial requirements remain stable. And here's something important, Keith. People don't realize, for those who are already on this program, any new changes to the core requirements doesn't impact them. Their requirements have been grandfathered. If you have applied in 2002, you would have to use the same conditions that you have used in 2002 to renew in 2022, which we just did for one client, which unfortunately passed away because he's like 95 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's actually very fair.
It is fair in the sense that you use the same set of conditions that you have used.
Yeah, it's very fair.
Yeah, and also very consistent. Now, I'll admit, back in 2006, when the fixed deposit requirements were triple, there was a wave of complaints, over the internet forum, not over social media because it wasn't present then. So it wasn't that bad as what you say, But guess what? Within 6 months, it all normalized. People got used to it, just like what they do with everything else, Same thing would have happened for the MM2H, the harsh MM2H. If it had lasted a little bit longer, which I don't think is a good idea, but if it had lasted a little bit longer, it would have been normalized too, okay? Now, this new MM2H, people are already settling down, applications are coming in, people are adapting to it, This is what I observe. I could be right, I could be wrong, but the ones that are saying the loudest, maybe they are not applying, or maybe they are applying, I don't know. But maybe they are already somewhere else, I have no idea. It's always the same voice amplified over and over again that, this is bad,
Interesting.
by the same person or whatever it is. Meanwhile, the ones who are really applying, they are not complaining. They are not even present on social media. They just get on with it.
Yeah, they just get on with it, yeah.
And from the demographic profile of the applicants, it has changed. It's now widely accepted that if you want to stay in Malaysia under the new MM2H, you need to buy a property. That's the reality. And we will deep dive into that in the next episode.
Fantastic. TG, thank you for part 3 and debunking the myths of MM2H.
Thank you, Keith. They got some problems and they say, "Shout, why do you need all these things, to be certified? Don't you see that I'm married? How am I supposed to know you are married?" Yeah. Then because the language issues, the English is horrible, there's misunderstanding everywhere.